Welcome to the Stacked Supplement Podcast, the premier source for supplement news and reviews.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Stacked Supplement Podcast. This is another interview edition, and we have a special guest with the president from Jim Stoppani's Jim Supplement Science, one of the longest running reputable brands out there. And it's Mike. Welcome. Thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, pleasure, Shane. Thank you. Big fan of what you guys have been doing for the last couple of years. So thanks for having me and taking the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jim, I was just sitting there thinking about this. Jim came onto the scene, like 5 years ago? I'm going to guess 2014.
It was actually, yeah, it's been a while. So Jim and I started the brand in 2013. The official launch was July 19th, 2013 with Pre-Gym. So kind of a day I'll never forget.
Because you had Pre-Gym was sort of the only supplement you had for a while, was it not? And then, I mean, it wasn't for a while, but it was like a short stint where it was just Pre-Gym by itself. And then you had the other two come along.
Right. Yeah, we never really thought that we would, the intent when we first started the brand was just to come out with a pre-workout. And, the whole entire idea behind the brand was built kind of in frustration in that particular category. At that time, a lot of companies were, getting pre-workouts that were proprietary blends, non-efficacious doses, concentrates. And so Jim and I were at Muscle and Fitness magazine together. He was our senior science editor. So I was the director in charge of the websites. And so I actually started muscleandfitness.com when it was just a website where it had PDFs of the magazine, and Flex Online and Muscle and Fitness Her. So a lot of the supplement brands that were advertising with the online part as well as in the magazine, those were brands that I would represent from a marketing and advertising publishing standpoint. And so they were very intrigued at that time about, what Jim was writing about in the magazine, because Jim would always talk about supplements in the form of what ingredients to take, what doses you should take. And so when it came down to, sorry about that. We're in COVID land, so all rules go off. Don't mind if a dog barks or kids come in. So what ended up happening was, I was a consumer, still am, and I was much like the consumers asking Jim, well, what do you think about this product? What do you think about this brand? And so when we were at the magazine together, because all of these guys were my advertisers and we were very close, and so my background was in sports medicine and exercise science, but supplements, it's not like you can get a real degree in that. And so like any consumer, I was just, only had the options of what was in the current marketplace. And so as pre-workouts at that time were kind of taken off. Yeah. A lot of these concentrates and, high stimulant ingredients were being put into products. And I just, out of curiosity, would always ask Jim, well, what should I take? And not really making the connection about what he would write in the magazine from an ingredient standpoint versus what you'd find on shelves. So we'd put out a piece of content, or Jim would, saying, hey, here's the top 10 best pre-workout supplements to take. And as a consumer, you're thinking, oh, okay, I can go and buy a product on a GNC shelf or go order it. But in Jim's mind, he wasn't talking about a specific brand. He was talking about the top 10 ingredients, things like branched chain amino acids, creatine, beta alanine, beta-EN, all of these ingredients, citrulline, malate. And so the connection was, I finally said to him in 2012, I said, Jim, what type of product would you recommend to take? And he said, well, outside of formulating your own, I wouldn't recommend taking any of them. And so I said, well, what if you would want to formulate your own product? And he says, well, if we can figure it out, yeah. And so that's what we did. Was the intent was just to come out with a pre-workout that would essentially be the product that Jim Stoppani himself would recommend, and consumers wouldn't necessarily have to formulate individual ingredients, which is what he recommended. So if you, on bodybuilding.com is where we first launched, and he was a big name and a big presence on bodybuilding.com. Excuse me. And so he had shortcut to size and shortcut to shred, which were the top 2 programs that bodybuilding.com put out there. And so when you go and follow his recommendations and find out his supplement recommendations at that time before gym, he would say, well, here's what to take pre-workout. And it was things like take, depending on the form of creatine, take 4 to 5 grams of creatine, take, 2 to 4 grams of beta alanine, take 1.5 to 3 grams of beta-EN or betaine, take 5 to 6 grams of BCAAs. And what bodybuilding.com would do at that time, they would go and find products that maybe had those ingredients listed on their label and start cross merchandising, with what Jim would say. And the consumers just were confused by that. And so that's when he and I got together, and I just said, what if we just created what you would want, launch it on bodybuilding.com, and it's your all-in-one pre-workout. And that's what we really wanted to do, was just go after the pre-workout category, which is the reason why we launched Gym, the pre-gym initially, and then it just kind of led to some others, which if you want me to get into, I can certainly.
It's interesting because I remember hearing about this list of recommendations many times.
Yeah.
People would say, I remember asking people why are you such a loyal gym fan? And they would say, oh man, he's been preaching all these ingredients for years, and then he just put them in a supplement. And I remember thinking, I was just like, well, I mean, why wouldn't you trust that? It seems as genuine as you can get. You hear people say, I've seen for years people put together supplements and they're not that great, so I did my own. But Jim did it with proof, he had that long-standing proof,
Right.
He was recommending things.
Well, yeah, and truth be told, it's been tough because you always hear people say, now you're selling out, you just are only interested in selling your own products and trying to make money and all that. And look, Jim, to be honest with you, he could care less about that. I don't even think he's asked me one time, what the sales have been or, anything like that. And, we can always go back, and anybody that said, oh, well, you're just trying to sell pre-gym now and you're biased, if somebody says, well, hey, how does pre-gym stack up against this other product? And we can legitimately say, look, go back in 2005, and we have articles that are all over my office, we have them framed, where just what I said earlier, which was the 10 ingredient, or let's talk about just 5, we call them the 5 must-have ingredients in a pre-workout. And if your pre-workout doesn't have these 5 ingredients, technically it's not doing you that much of a service. It's akin to saying, I'm going to go ahead and do a chest workout and leave out bench press and flies, and only do push-ups. That's not you're missing the foundational ingredients that really you need for a pre-workout. But Jim was talking about that in 2005, 2006, for 10 years prior to even thinking about coming out with our own. And he just used the ingredients and the doses that he had been recommending way before. So it wasn't that, it's difficult for us sometimes when people say, oh, you're just only interested in selling, you sold out, Jim, you used to be the guy who I went to for advice, and now only you care about selling your own products. The difference is, it's not like he's creating products for consumers to take. He's creating products for himself and for me. And so the recommendations, like I said, the foundation of those ingredients, pick up a Muscle and Fitness magazine from 2004, 2005. You're going to see the same ingredients and the same doses. He was talking about creatine. The first article I ever saw him talk about creatine, the best supplement stack to take before and after a workout. Take 5 to 6 grams of branched chain amino acids, take 4 to 5 grams of creatine. And this is before the creatine hydrochloride really came out, into the market, which I can get into too. And, take, 2 to 4 grams of beta alanine and citrulline. Even back then, citrulline malate, there was only one company that really came out with citrulline malate way back in the day, was ErgoPharm. And ErgoPharm, Patrick Arnold, formulated citrulline malate. It used to come in a green apple container. I think it was around 2003, 2004. I remember it was the first time I ever saw citrulline malate, and it was a liquid cap. You would take a cap full of it, and Jim loved it. And I remember he wrote about it, and I coordinated with the guys back then. So these ingredients that Jim formulates to put into the products have a history going back years before we ever started a supplement brand.
That was, I think that was one of the things that so many fans appreciated, and so many fans just because. So the thing that I thought was interesting when Jim came out is I was a little bit late to the game, because if you said 2013, I don't think Jim showed up on my radar till maybe late 2013. I'd heard about it,
Yeah, right.
but I didn't know too much about it. And I just remember someone saying, "Oh, Jim Stoppani's this, Jim Stoppani's that," and I knew him from the bodybuilding.com program, so I was like, maybe that's what it is.
Right.
So I was kind of going, and then someone told me, "Oh, nothing is as good as pre-gym," and I remember going, "Okay, what's pre-gym?" And then I looked it up, and then we started getting comments saying, "Why would you put in 2 grams of citrulline malate? Why have you only got 1 gram of beta alanine?" And I had seen people say things like, "I want beta alanine in my pre-workout. I want citrulline in my pre-workout." I had never seen people name these dosages, but I'd never seen it before, at least as frequent as this. And they were all referencing Jim. And I just remember looking it up, and that, I guess at the time was when the Jim Army became known as such a loyal, strong following.
Pretty passionate.
And people ask me, they say, what are some of the game changers you've seen over the years? And I always say jacked. Just not necessarily the ingredients they use, but the idea of the concept.
You can't deny the success of some of these products.
It encouraged people to look for other great ingredients that would make it bent. Like, it just spawned and drove out the category. And another one I always bring up is Jim. And the main reason I say that is because transparency existed, like bits and pieces of it.
Right.
There were brands that did it. But Jim came out, and not only did he drive it, that transparency was a big part of the brand, he instilled it in his fans.
Right.
And that just pushed it out there. And then it was at that time when pre-Jim came out that every other company started doing the same thing.
Right.
Because I had comments, so I imagined that they were getting comments.
Oh, yeah, we took it on the chin. I mean, to your point, Shane, there were really 2 reasons.
That was my question. What was because he didn't just go fully transparent. He went he drove it right down everyone, just like, this is what you actually need. And to his point, he was very much correct. So what was, I guess, I was interested as his drive or goal behind that?
Well, the goal was twofold, or a couple different ones. One is that, you mentioned jacked, which obviously was one of the issues, not from the standpoint of what the product was, but how it was what it was presented to the consumers. If you want that type of product and that type of feeling, fine. As long as you know there's nothing wrong with the high stimulant product that gives you that energy, that gives you all those things. But to call it a pre-workout is disingenuous to the actual category itself. When people think about pre-workouts, they want strength, energy, endurance, and the ability to build muscle, right? Though that comes by way of nutrients, not stimulants. If you want a stimulant, if you want something to where you want that drug effect, fine. Just understand what you're taking. It's no different than me saying, "Hey, Shane, we're going to go train chest today." You're like, "Cool." And all we do is squats. You'd be like, "Well, wait a minute. I want to train chest." And I'm like, "No, dude, I can put a bar on your back. We got full." You'd be like, "But I want to train chest." It's like, yeah, we're working out, but you're not targeting the focus of what your goal is. Your goal is to get a big chest. So let's fucking do exercises that are going to go ahead and help develop the pecs. Same thing with pre-workout. You want things that will build muscle, increase strength, increase endurance. You need nutrients. No stimulant's going to do that. You got to have nutrients that feed the muscles. And that's where gyms always come in. We're not big on stims. It's not the fact that we don't like them. It's that we have yet to create a product, and we might. We're looking at, in the future of, energy and performance, but be specific about what that product is. And it comes down to ingredients. You know, if you want to get 19-inch arms, I don't care how many freaking side lateral raises you do. It's the wrong exercise to get you fucking 19-inch arms. You got to do some curls. So with a product, same thing, protein. And, you know, we talked about pre-gym being the first product. Yeah, it was. But then we got into protein. Why?
Yeah.
Because we started looking at the protein we were taking and realized the shit was spiked. They were telling us you're getting 20 to 25 grams of protein. Awesome. But then you look at the labels, you find out what's going on. It's maybe 10 grams of actual protein coming from sources like whey, and the rest of the 10 grams, they have things like anytime that you have glutamine or creatine or anything with INE, these aminos that are stuffed into a protein blend, you got to ask why. You know, there's ways in which you can do it correctly, but back then a lot of these companies were doing it. So when they tested the protein content, it spiked the level of protein when the source of protein you weren't getting from what you should have been paying for. There were cheap amino acids, glycine, taurine, creatine, you know, all these INE ingredients that you could throw into a protein powder are cheap. So the companies that were doing that, and some still are, they've just changed the way that they've done their labels. Mm-hmm. So when Jim and I kind of looked at this, I was pissed as a consumer. And these were things that were going on for a long time. So you say, why did we start? Two reasons. One, selfish, because we wanted products, especially Jim, that he knew that he could formulate, work with the manufacturer, qualify, make sure that the ingredients were legitimate. What was on the label was in the bottle, because he didn't trust anybody because we've been dupes for so long. And two, Jim and I sat on a panel back in 2003 when I first started at Muscle and Fitness. And we tried to form a lobbyist group that would protect the supplement industry. The supplement industry is, as you know, kind of like under Deshay and, you know, some way that kind of protects us from a legal standpoint and keeps the feds as far out. Because realistically, I'm telling you right now, what a lot of people in Washington and Big Pharma wants is they want you to go to the doctor and get a prescription for protein powder. And if the supplement industry doesn't self-regulate, somebody else is going to come in from a federal body and regulate and ruin everything for entrepreneurs like myself and anybody else who wants to start a brand. So back then, I remember sitting at this table. Schwarzenegger was there. We were at the Arnold Classic. We were there representing Muscle and Fitness because we were trying to get everybody together. We had every brand there. So you have Muscle Tech, EAS, Gaspari, BSN, SAN, Champion Nutrition, Universal, every single brand that represented the Arnold that year. We all get in a room. And we were there to talk about why don't we create a regulatory body to where we won't allow brands to come into our world unless they're qualified based on, you know, a standard that allows them to create supplements that if they create a supplement, GNC won't take them, bodybuilding won't take them. And at that time, Vitamin Shop won't take them because there's standards. So if you wanted to jump into a category, create a supplement, what qualifies that to be officially into our industry? And we all wanted to formulate our own panel. I sat back, I was 23 years old. I got started in the industry when I was 22, so I've only been there for a year. But I watched all these brands bicker. Well, my products are better than his products, and he's doing this, and he's doing that. I'm just like, this is never going to work out. So for years, the group that I worked with at Weider at Muscle and Fitness Magazine, we'd always talk about this, like, how do you form something that gives a standard? And the only way that I thought, it took me a long time to figure this out, was you have to educate the consumer so that they understand what it is to take. There's a reason why big food companies don't use high fructose corn syrup and trans fats, because they're bad and the consumers know it. So they're starting to understand if they buy a loaf of bread and there's something like that with high trans fats and high fructose corn syrup, they're going to go, I don't want that in my diet. So the only way to really affect change is you go and you educate the consumers. And what you just explained has happened. We did that with pre-gym. We showed the consumers what a real pre-workout actually looks like. By default, and we never talked about any one specific brand. We just said, hey, look, if you're in a neighborhood and all the houses in the neighborhood are getting robbed and everybody's going out going, who's robbing us? All we did is say, hey, if you see a guy in a ski mask with a crowbar, it's probably the suspect. Be on the lookout. So we don't know his name. So when we talked about what a pre-workout should be, we had to define what a pre-workout shouldn't be. At that time, it was saying a pre-workout with a little scoop that's 3 to 5 grams is not a pre-workout, because you can't jam enough amino acids in there, creatine, beta alanine. You get those 3 ingredients at the right doses, you're already at 11 grams. You have to, you can't concentrate the form of those ingredients down to a smaller amount. So what really is in that little, 3 gram, 5 gram, and even 11 grams.
I think people forget how small those scoops were back then. Jack was
So
like a 4 or a 5 or something.
So, so the only thing is, when you're thinking, well, what such small amount is going to give you a reaction that's going to allow you to go ahead and have a great workout? It's called a drug effect. It's a stimulant effect. And that does nothing to help truly build muscle. And I tell people all the time, I'd say, look, man, if you want that effect, you can probably find a Coke dealer and get the same type of effect. I'm not advocating to do drugs, but you don't know what you're getting. You would read these labels and the ingredients were in there, and a lot of them have been banned, since then. So it was important to start with tried and true ingredients based on nutrients, and also to set the standard for the consumers. And as a result, I've always embraced any company that's come out there with a product that, people say, well, aren't you mad because they're trying to copy you and mimic you? We say no, because what they're doing, if the consumers are able to walk up to a GNC shelf or somewhere else in the category of pre-workout and they pull down a bottle, whether it's mine or theirs, if they're getting something that has the efficacious doses of those ingredients, we're winning as an industry. And I'll go to battle with those companies any day, because my thing that I always have, my ace in the hole is, well, who actually formulated that product that you pulled off the shelf? I know with us, I can show you who formulated it. And there's a pedigree there. I mean, the guy was a research scientist at Yale doing research for the Department of Defense in the 90s. Who formulates your products?
Yeah.
Mine's
I think people forget sometimes back in the day, I remember seeing some scoops that were like 2 grams, 2.5, I think was the smallest one I had seen. And it was pretty crazy back then. But I still wholeheartedly believe that if it wasn't for Jim, who pushed for transparency, it happened it affected a lot of companies, and a lot of them did it. Because back then, a lot of those big guys wouldn't do the concentrates, they wouldn't do the gray stems. Now, I think you're seeing basically Jim's effort really cemented, because now you probably don't, I see 90%, 95% of pre-workouts are transparent. Sometimes you see the half and halves where they put the stems in a blend, but they put those gym ingredients, they make those open and transparent. So it's different, because now you do get those guys that they put together a couple stems, some of the more hardcore, gray, intense stuff, and you mix it with those key gym ingredients.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, to your point, I think, look, there's nothing wrong with again, those type of products. Just call it like it is.
Yeah.
Just explain to the consumers that, hey, this isn't really a pre-workout. This is a high stimulant product that you're going to be able to take to give you insane amounts of energy. But it's not providing the muscles with nutrients. That's the problem that I have. It's the claims based on the actual products that I have an issue with.
The intense energy and the
tunnel
vision.
Don't lump it together, because from even a commercialization standpoint, those are very cheap. Stimulants are cheap. You're talking, that's the reason we had to justify when we came to the market with pre-gym. It was a 20 serve with a massive scoop that was 26 grams. And, MSRP was $35. We were going up against products in the same category,
25, 30,
that were 40 servings for $29. Yeah. And people would say, I don't like taking your product because the scoop size is so big. And I'm going, because you're getting more.
Yeah.
Like, why is it only 20 servings? I get 40 servings over here. I said, I could easily go ahead and put my scoop in a 3 gram scoop size. And from there, I have to get my chargers for my iPad here.
That's right.
But, we could do the same thing, and you guys could have 150 servings of ours if we broke it down like that. But we want to give you efficacious doses.
Yeah, see, that's the thing I think people might forget is that Jim, a lot of the things that I guess are staples in pre-workouts now, such as those the gym ingredients, the citrulline malate, the beta alanine, the creatine, and the 20 servings and the price point, those I think are very much kind of cemented now, mostly because of Jim, because those are values that he pushed. Those were things that he kind of encouraged and things he forced, and now have just become a mainstay in the pre-workout market. Because again, you get pre-workouts now that aren't just stims. They do that. They basically must have listened to what Jim said. Don't just put stims in there if you want to be a pre-workout. Now they combine, but then you get the result. You get the now pre-workouts are typically into the $50 range.
And that's what you're seeing. I mean, I think realistically, when you actually look at a product like Pre-Gym, for instance, we knew that we had a challenge against us at that time, because pre-workouts, from just a financial standpoint, the wallet size from a consumer's were that I'm going to spend $30 and get a great workout, and I'm going to get X amount of servings. And so we were really up against it to try and come in and do something completely different and explain that, look, ingredients matter, and understand what that is. But at the same time, it's very expensive to do. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these brands, that are popping up with their pre-workouts. And it's a good thing, because a lot of brands are, putting in actual efficacious amounts of beta alanine, and they're listing it. I mean, before you couldn't find, you would find maybe one or two pre-workouts that were not a proprietary blend. And so anyone listening understands what a proprietary blend is. That's like listing a whole bunch of exercises in the workout program and not listing the sets and reps. It's like if Shane and I are going to go hit up a workout for chest, and I say, we're going to do bench press, flies, push-ups, incline, dumbbell bench, and we're just going to do 100 reps. Shane would be like, well, how many sets and reps are we doing a bench? We'll just figure it out. So that's the difference between what you're getting on the back of a label. If somebody looks at your products, is that if you're taking a pre-workout, whether it's ours or somebody else's, the individual ingredients has to have an actual dose. And more importantly, that dose has to be the right amount. It's no different than saying, well, if it's not the right amount, then you might as well say, well, I'm going to do bench press one set of 1 rep. No, like you need multiple sets and multiple reps, and generally speaking, within the 8 to 12 range is probably your best bet, depending on your way. So there's a lot of things that go into making that product correct. And we're seeing a lot of that now, which is good. But the price points, because a lot of these brands didn't start that way, I'm not going to mention any, but I think you can kind of figure out who they are. But a lot of those brands were the same brands who were doing the concentrates, the proprietary blends. They've reinvented themselves. So now they're like, well, how can we create a product that competes with Jim? And what they find out is that the margins are slim. So they have to set a price point at, $50, $60 in order for it to make financial sense. And I think that's where it was difficult for us, because we had the intent to just come out, and our exclusivity at that time was only one channel. It was bodybuilding.com. And, when you start expanding, you realize that it becomes difficult to maintain that same price point for 7 years, especially when the ingredient costs have gone up dramatically. And it's like, it makes sense, because if more people are buying more beta alanine, the cost of that ingredient, supply and demand, where if they have a lot of it, they're willing to negotiate better prices. Where if you're waiting in line to try and get some of those ingredients because you have so many other brands buying the same, more demand creates an increase in cost of goods. So that's where it's become challenging, but it's also become good, because in the end, if somebody says, hey, what do you think about this and we have it all the time. And the gym army, a lot of people say, well, they're so biased and this, and they're not. They're just educated. And we don't, I moderate that page personally. And so I approve every comment, and there's only like a handful of people who I've even authorized to go ahead and approve comments or approve people, because we want to make sure the conversation isn't thwarted, and we want to make sure it's not infiltrated by a bunch of, people who are just going to cause problems. But I have no issue if somebody posts, say, what do you guys think about this product? And it happens to be another brand. I'll be the first one to comment and say, that's actually a pretty decent product. Maybe they should have added a little bit more creatine or beta alanine or whatever it is. Or if it's good, and, we'll say it's good. And once again, it always comes down to, even if it's something to where it could be an identical match, and there's a couple products out there that are very close to pre-gym.
There are some, yeah.
Yeah, and I always say, I'm like, hey, that's a great product, but let me ask you this question, Mr. Consumer. Wouldn't it be nice if you could ask the guy who formulated the product questions about it? Who formulated that product, and can you get in touch with the actual owners? With us, you can. People can hit Jim up on Facebook, and 100% it is Jim that answers, And if he doesn't type it out, it's a link with him giving you the video that explains exactly what it is that you're supposed to be getting with the product. So we take great pride in service to the consumers. We welcome the competition, but realistically, the goal is to make sure that the industry is preserved for years to come, because if I didn't do this, I don't know, I'd go try and sell ice cream or something. So figure it out. So this industry is very important to us because we are the consumers, as you know. I mean, you are too, which is the reason why you do what you do.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like hearing about the start and how it began and everything and the decisions that were made specifically around the transparency, I kind of knew that those would be the answers. I kind of knew that was like it's just one of those things, right? Like see some criminal doing something and someone stops him, and if you ask him why he stopped him, the answer is going to be like,
because he's doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. So I mean, he knew the guy that stopped him was. So I mean, Jim Stoppani, a lot of the reasons, the Jim brand and the decisions they made, you kind of knew it, right? Like the protein powder came around when amino spiking was very popular.
Right. It
we
was.
didn't know it. Transparent pre-workouts were non-existent. So you knew the reason why. It's in the name. You wanted to know what's in your pre-workout, and he gave it. So it's it makes sense.
Well, and that's the thing. And with any of the products we've done, I mean, realistically, and I'll be honest with you, even when that protein spiking stuff was coming out, we got hit up by a legal defense team that wanted Jim to be an expert witness because they were going after these. So there's a legal team that monitors the industry, and they were going after to try and take out our competition. So, and they said, hey, Jim, would you be an expert witness? We're going after so-and-so brand and this brand. And you would think that, yeah, sure. Jim absolutely was like, I don't even want to be involved. It's not about that. It's not about taking out the other guy. It's about just educating the consumers and let them look. If we did what we did and the consumers didn't adopt what we were talking about, and if it didn't matter to them, then we wouldn't be here. It was never about trying to, and a lot of people say, oh, you guys used to, shit on brands and used to, who?
No, you didn't shit on brands. Like I said, you would just
mention. Yeah, there were a lot of, and what happens is, as you know, it's like consumers would ask questions. Oh, he must be talking about this brand. We're like, we never said that. It was you to see the lines. If you say, turn your label around and look at it. And if the protein label under ingredients has lysine, taurine, beta alanine, that company is lying to you because they were. And then a consumer would turn their protein powder around. And if that happened to be the brand that was doing it, they would post on social media saying, oh my God, look what so-and-so brand is doing. Jim was talking about them. It's like, we never said that. They just happen to be one of the guilty parties. And it's not our fault don't blame us. Don't get mad at us. And I'll be honest with you, there were brands that, filed lawsuits against us, literally trying to manipulate those social posts and saying that Jim made them. And of course they fell short, because once I looked at it, I'm like, oh, you guys copied and pasted a consumer's social post and made it look like Jim. And here's side-by-side comparisons here, Mr. Lawyer. Do you really want to go to court on this? Oh no, because I could sue you for lying.
It's kind of like the rubber analogy you were saying earlier.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
You just described it, and then consumers were pointing it out.
But you guys have always done a great job, I think. I think it was I'll never forget, Shane, when we first launched, you guys, I think that was right around the time you guys started really getting some momentum. And I actually did a video on social just explaining my admiration for what you guys were doing, because I think you guys are really good about just covering any and all brands unbiasedly and evenly, and just giving the consumers the benefit of finding the information for themselves and allowing themselves to kind of make the determination and decision on what brands, what products are out there. And so we've always been big fans. We've always applauded your efforts and what you guys have done. It's been watching you guys do what you've done. And we were very, very proud to take home the Stack.com Protein Wars trophy this year. So that was a big one for us, but I think it just underscores the admiration that I think not only myself, but a lot of other industry people have for you guys as well.
The Protein Wars was, because we changed it up a bit this year. I wanted to make it less about people being like, hey, because originally it was like, hey, tell people to go vote, like bodybuilding.com's awards. And I was like, that's cool, that's no problem. But then obviously, like with anything in life, it gets exaggerated. And then you get people putting on emails. And I was like, okay, this is a bit. And the year before, it was a bit too much. And I was like, okay, what can we do to change it to make it a little more like we originally wanted? And so this past year, we were like, you know what? One vote a week. That way you're not going to be spammed. That way it's going to be all about how many fans you have, not how many are willing to vote 7 days a week. So that was one of the big changes. We introduced the security on the voting, where you had to sort of vote, get the email, then confirm. So there are a lot of new things introduced this year. And when Jim started winning out each round, people were like, oh, how's Jim winning? I was like, to be honest, and I said this to a lot of brands, and a lot of brands said the same thing. So I don't know how they didn't win earlier. If anything, like that's, as we were talking earlier, the Jim army loves Jim because they've been educated on what they want or what they need. They like the sound of it, and they've stuck with Jim since probably it started. And you can't beat fans that loyal. And so when Jim got into the final, I was like, I would not be surprised if they take this home, because even up against the social influencer or a big social media influencer brand, Arms Race and Julian Smith, I was like, I don't know, because we've had social influencer brands before do well, but I was like, Jim, you have to understand is that it's those extra steps. Like if a social influencer, like go to the site, vote, done. Go to the site, into the capture, into your email, go to your email, click confirm. It's a lot of steps. A loyal fan would have no trouble doing that.
Right, and that's
what happened, I think.
Yeah, and just so you know, I all my respect to Arms Race. They actually kind of tipped the hat a little bit on social to us.
They did, it was very nice.
And I just so everybody knows out there, when it comes to all the social stuff, there's two people who handle social. Jim handles his personal. I specifically handle everything for the actual brand itself. So, so we don't have, we have a team that kind of does some things, but I've always thought that if you're going to go ahead and make a promise to the consumer about transparency, it has to be founded in something that is bulletproof, which means when people say, well, does Jim really respond? Yeah, it's him. Who's really responding, on the Instagram, and it's me, so it's the owners who are involved in that aspect of making sure. And I think to your point, that's what creates loyalty. People want to know that, like you, if people, I've always been, years ago, I always said, because I saw it happen. I saw the mistakes. Jim and I both saw the mistakes so many brands would make, and you mentioned influencers, and, we really don't do influencers. It's not because of anything other than this. And people, we get hit up all the time. People say, well, I'd love to be an influencer for your brands. Okay. Unless you're authentically taking the products because you understand the result and the benefit from taking them and the ethos that we have as an organization to do the right thing, I will never pay somebody to go ahead and say that we're the best if they truly don't believe that. It will not happen. That doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities, because the majority of the people who actually work for the organization were former Jim Army. There were people, when we started, this was just Jim and I, and the people who we've hired to bring on, a lot of them, like our customer service reps, they were born out of the Jim Army. That's cool. There are people who were like, hey, if you have any opportunity to work for the organization, and it helps because I don't have to teach them anything. They were self-taught based on what we were doing. So they're just echoing the same things Jim and I were able to do. Yeah. And what's nice is when you put a face to a brand and you put that ownership to where they feel like they have the ability to be reached, it matters. When people want an answer from Jim, they're going to get Jim. If people want an answer from me, they're going to get me. I don't have a proxy that I try and pass off to. And I think with influencers, I told years ago, Muscle Tech, we were talking about strategy, because Muscle Tech, was the biggest advertiser we had in muscle and fitness. And what they would do is they would run, and a lot of brands did, but they just had the deepest pockets. They would run advertorials, and the advertorials were ads that were disguised to look like edit in the magazine. So to a consumer who would flip through the magazines, they'd see, Jay Cutler or Ronnie Coleman, like, oh, this is, the path to Mr. Olympia. And it'd be a story about Ronnie's path or Jay's path at that time, and BS, same thing. And they say, oh, well, and they took these products, Cell Tech and Nitro Tech or whatever, and it worked really, really well. But then I always thought, well, when Jay went ahead and did his own thing, now he's got Jay Cutler supplements, and Ronnie went ahead and did, Ronnie Coleman, his brand. To the consumer is like, well, wait a minute, there was no loyalty, and that's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but to me as a consumer, as a kid who, whether they're 18, 19, 20 or coming up, if you're not authentically saying something, if you're a sponsored athlete, in my opinion, I want to know the truth. I want to know why, like Shane, I want to know what products you take and why, not because you're getting paid for it, but because you truly believe in it. And I think that's what's really, that's another element of what was missing in this industry at that time. And now we see, and successfully, a lot of brands have done this. Now they've seen the social media influencers, and they, send out a bunch of product and things like that. But my thing is that person really taking that product to get the results? The answer is no. There's no way that those guys were winning on Olympia stage by just taking Muscle Tech products. It doesn't happen, So I was always about, what is the real consumer doing? Because to me, a transformation is much better to the guy like Will Kucherik, who is our lead customer service rep. The dude was morbidly obese, ready to die. I think he was pushing 400 some odd pounds. And, and his story is the real transformation. Is he a guy that's going to step on stage? No. But the dude is now about 200 pounds. He's got some pretty good pipes on him, and he did what was best for him. That's a guy who is going to commit to something, who's going to take the products that will help him, who's going to do the program that will help him, who's going to eat right. And to me, I would much rather use that guy as an influencer, because it's authentic and because he understands the path that he took was a path that somebody else could have. And that's where I think that with our Jim Army, it's not a list of consumers who are brainwashed because they think Jim's the way, the light, and the truth. It's because they got to the point to where they were almost done with fitness with supplements and with trying to get a result. They were me, really. I was so pissed off prior to doing this brand because I would take all these different products thinking that I was getting all these benefits and all this different stuff. And I train like crazy. My background, I know what I'm doing when it comes to the gym. But I'm like, wait a minute. So this product really isn't giving me all the protein I want? Really? That's kind of bullshit. And it almost put me to the point where I'm like, you used to hear, oh, supplements don't work. I was told when I was educated going through college, supplements don't work. And at that time, they weren't far from the truth. So that's why what we wanted to do with Jim especially was supplements do work if they're taking the right ingredients with the right dose, with the right combination of those ingredients, the right form of those ingredients, taken at the right time. If you can nail, we call them the 5 pillars of supplementation. If companies would start making sure that they're using the right ingredients, the right form of those ingredients, which is like, I'll give you an example. So whether it's creatine monohydrate or creatine hydrochloride, that's the different type of form. The right dose combined with the other type of ingredients in the right time. The industry is not going to go down the path of being absorbed by big pharma. We have a future, and other brands after us have a future. And anybody listening, that 18-year-old kid who might be inspired to create his own brand understands what it takes to do it and to do it the right way. And that's what we want. Because look, I mean, we know we have Jim's got an expiration date on him. So do I. I hope the brand doesn't. But if we can, for our time, set a standard to where future generations of people looking for results, because people are always going to want to be getting fit, always going to want to, get results. If we lose this opportunity to be able to correct it by giving consumers what they want and not have somebody say, point a finger and say, you're doing it wrong, therefore we need to regulate, then I'm excited about my son's future, in terms of having the same path. And that's really what Jim and I talk about constantly, are those things. Sorry for the long-winded.
No, I like what you said with the influencer, because I this came up in conversation the other day and I can't remember how it did. And I was sitting there trying to think of the first, because influencer was always my term for brands that had someone popular as the face. And when you just mentioned Ronnie right there, I was always because we always related them to influencers who were sponsored by a brand.
Right.
It was really Jim, Ronnie. I would say you guys are probably the earliest that came out with brands of your own, and you have to kind of believe in them. Not that you have to, but because much to your point, there's influencers that would jump from brand to brand to brand, year to year to year. But I support this product, I support this product.
Right.
When you come out with your own one, you're like, oh, okay, because that's not going to go you're going to give up on that because it's your own one. I have yet to see someone start their own, jump ship, and then go back to a brand. I haven't seen that yet.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, and I will say, even some of these influencers, who are athletes who used to promote and rep brand. I mean, it's just the natural, ecosystem of this industry, to where there are some brands out there right now who are, owned by former athletes of another brand. And that's perfectly fine in my opinion.
I would be surprised if Stoppani encouraged that, like him making his own, doing what he wanted to do, and be like, you know what, screw this. This is exactly what I want.
I'm going to do it my way. Right.
And I think, because Andres is very much like that. Julian Smith, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was
he was the one who took me up on.
Yeah, he was Optimum Nutrition. I didn't even know that until they were in the semifinal.
Well, the guys from Ghost were Gaspari.
Excelco. No. Ryan was BSN.
Was he
BSN?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Either way.
Oh, damn it. It's going to bug the hell out of me. No,
that's the natural state, I think. And so what we're actually looking to do in the future is, there are some things, every single one of Jim's Supplement Science products are Jim Stoppani's preference of his products. But Jim is a formulator by nature. Jim is he's a scientist at his heart. And I always say to him, Jim, it's funny because, you know, you've chosen the creatine is a perfect example. The reason why, Jim, we don't use creatine monohydrate in any of our products is because Jim can't take it, because with his stomach, in most people, it causes explosive diarrhea, you know, in some people. And it's because the amount that you have to take, if you have to take a 4 to 5 gram dose, your body is really only absorbing and utilizing around 3 grams. The remainder sits in the stomach and then passes through the intestines, and then out comes the situation.
The fun side.
Right. So he prefers hydrochloride because it doesn't draw in water like it absorbs in the water. It's like a salt. So, but does that mean creatine monohydrate is bad? Absolutely not. It's a wonderful ingredient. Really actually has the most research behind it. So I always told Jim, I said, look, and we might end up doing some things that in the next year that will be interesting. So there have been a lot of people who have major reach within their influencing network and who've come to Jim and were like, can you formulate a product for me? And I'm all about it, because he's then formulating for a specific need for that specific person as he formulated a specific need for himself. And I like that approach because it keeps Jim where he originally was, which is, this used to happen all the time. I mean, before we started Jim Supplement Science, I had, it was MRI, Optimum, BPI, Muscle Tech, all these brands were like, would Jim formulate products for us and, like, you know, kind of be our go-to? Because that's what they used to do in the magazine, was they'd come to me and say, hey, what's Jim writing about next month? Well, he's writing a post-workout article. He's going to be covering, you know, alpha lipoic acid, dextrose, and BCAAs. They're like, oh, well, my products have BCAAs and dextrose in it. And so I would merchandise those articles right next to that editorial. So when Jim's talking about, like, hey, this is what you need post-workout from an ingredient, they'd look and they'd see, you know, Cytosports, you know, Monster Fuel or something like that, make the correlation. The problem was, as Jim always said, he goes, well, some of those products, they're still not my formulas because they're not the right, maybe they have that ingredient listed among 5 or 6, but they're not, the synergy behind them isn't accurate.
Yeah.
But I told him, I said, look, I said, you know, we're getting a lot of people who want to step into the industry and, you know, they would love to take pre-gym, but they still want their own, you know, they still, like, maybe they want something for a little bit more energy, or maybe they want something that focuses more on pump and these types of things. And so we are talking about Jim helping other brands get their foot in the door. And then, you know, be able to say, he's my guy, you know, who formulated the products, Dr. Jim Stepani, you know, so that's still been, you know, a conversation that we've been looking into, because it's not just about us as a brand, it's about the industry. And I started when I was 22, fresh out of college, started Muscle and Fitness magazine and Weeder Publications. And I had a very unique experience to be able to kind of see the promises that were made by everything that we did in those magazines. And I want to make sure that integrity lasts for a long time. So be it if there's other brands out there that we might have a business relationship with that aren't necessarily Jim. I welcome it. You know, I welcome it, because it's going to give the consumers a better experience. And as I always said, they can always graduate to JYM, because I think it's the end of the rainbow brand, which is the reason why that Jim Army is so passionate, because after failed time and time, after being let down throughout the years, they hit a wall, they hit with us, they take the products and like, holy shit, it works, you know, it works. And then we engage with them. And
yeah, I mean, Jim is to me is one of the most reputable mainstream, I would say not mainstream, like core brands.
Yeah.
Like out of the big ones out there, like you said, Cellucor, Muscle Tech, even Optimum. Jim is just one of the more complex, well-rounded in that mainstream group. None of the sort of the newer guys and the up-and-coming guys. Like, it's a brand you can find everywhere, and it's comprehensive as hell. You have covered so many categories, and with Jim, you've covered them extremely well. fat loss, protein post-workout, carb-free post-workout. You've come out with those simpler ones last year, but I mean, it's just covered everything quite well, and it's one of the few.
What's next? I kind of feel like you're saying what's next.
You know what? I think that was what I was thinking of when I started that sentence. But yeah, I mean, it is a comprehensive brand, and you're one of the few out there. Like Cellucor, again, is mostly a pre-workout brand, and they made that their goal, made it very obvious.
Right, yeah.
But I don't think it'd be hard pressed to find a brand that has the one vitamin, the one testosterone booster.
Right.
Like, and you can stack them and you can shift them around. You won't need to ask Jim, hey, if I want to lose weight, what would you recommend? He's made it very clear.
Right.
And I think it's one of the biggest mainstream core brands out there. And, the formula's up to scratch. So, I mean, again, as you said, with all of that said, and with all the things you've come out with, I mean, what is next in store for Jim? Because, I mean, we were talking about you from 2013. A lot of stuff has happened.
Pre-Jim hasn't changed since 2013, right? I
don't think you've reformulated anything, as far as I know.
Nothing.
No, yeah, and I think, and you've expanded to the two fat burners. You had the Shred Gym and the SS8, the more recent one. And like I said, you've sort of just covered every category, I would think.
I mean, I think, that's and you said it best. I mean, I think that to your point, the whole goal originally was to where you could, when people take supplements, you would see their carts be, well, they're going to take, NO Explode for the pre-workout. They'll take Muscle Tech or Dymatize for their protein, and maybe they'll take Twin Lab, So it was a mixture and a variety of supplements. And that's what we saw for many years. And with Jim, I mentioned that synergy pillar. And the real synergy comes in a brand and somebody who understands formulation, creating a family of products. Because originally, as I said, pre-Jim was only supposed to be the product that we came out with. And when we started finding out about, for instance, Jim was hard pressed about a vitamin. And I said, well, Jim, what are you taking? And we didn't think that there was such a high demand out there for like a real vitamin that didn't have ingredients that would contradict one another. So I'll give your listeners a little, bit of knowledge here. If your vitamin, your multivitamin, for instance, has zinc, calcium, or magnesium, it's actually interfering with other micronutrients in that multivitamin. Calcium interferes with the uptake of, well, zinc interferes with the uptake of calcium. I forget the synergy because Jim's the formula of it. But those ingredients will actually prevent other micronutrients being absorbed by the body. So it's like, if you're paying to take them and you're like, oh, I'm getting my iron and all that, I think that's what zinc interferes with iron. Calcium interferes with magnesium, anyway, they cancel each other out. So you don't want them in the same formula taken at the same time. And that's the reason why, like VitaGym doesn't have any calcium, doesn't have any zinc, doesn't have any magnesium. People say, well, why is that? It's like, well, if you take our line and you're getting 400 milligrams of calcium from taking ProGym. That's where your calcium is. And we tell you, you don't take the multivitamin with the protein. You don't do it. The zinc and magnesium are taken out of the vitamin, and we have a ZMA, and we're one of the only brands who actually has that form, and we tell you to take it at night. So the idea was Jim thought about, how can I create all of these products to work together to where somebody could buy our entire brand, get an outline of how to take the products throughout the day, and have every one of their micronutrient and their macronutrient levels covered when it comes to supplements. And so that was the original idea. But with supplements, there come a lot of different things that can be more specific. Like, for instance, the reason why we had ProGym and the formula we use was because for working out purposes, if you take a blend of fast digesting protein powder like an isolate and a slower digesting protein powder like a casein, and you get those together, it creates a longer window of muscle protein synthesis. than just a whey protein isolate alone. Does that mean that whey protein isolate is bad? No, absolutely not. It just means for working out purposes, if you want to extend that window to where you're getting a longer nutritional influx of nutrients to the muscle for a longer period of time, you just don't get that high spike and then it coming down with whey protein isolate, but then the casein kind of comes in. ProGym is your answer. But in ProGym, as you probably know, there's different types of protein. There's whey protein isolate, casein, milk protein isolate, and egg. Well, what we found is that we'll never change that formula, but a lot of people are like, well, I can't eat dairy. It's bad for me. So what do? That's why we came out with our
ISO.
The ISO, because we're like, well, we're not going to tell those people to go buy something else that we don't have. We'll formulate a product for them. But Jim was like, look, I want something that is like water. I don't want to compete a protein powder with ProGym. He's like, I want something that, and it took us a long time to develop, and it wasn't an easy thing to make a clear isolate that when you mix it, I drink like 5 of these a day. It's the easiest way to get the most amount of protein. So the thought with Jim was, well, if muscle protein synthesis with whey protein isolate in one shake is going to kick on in, very short period of time, I want something that people can drink a lot of throughout the day so that they're constantly getting, protein throughout the day from whey isolate. And usually I'm going to make sure that they know that they should probably take the whey protein isolate with meals. And so the whole thought process behind all the formulations that he comes in, something as simple as isolate, nobody thinks about how to really apply it correctly. So that's where you see some of the line extensions of like the isolate. And I will tell you, the next one that we got probably within the next couple of weeks is going to be our vegan, our plant-based protein. The problem Jim always had with plant-based proteins was that it's not as anabolic as a whey. It just isn't. So what he did is he looked at, the sources of the plant-based proteins that he wanted to use. And in this case, you have to add specific amino acids to boost the levels to make it more anabolic. So he went through and he looked at all the different aminos he wanted to add, not to spike it like what everybody else used to do with the whey protein, but to make sure that it was just as anabolic. And so that's another category. Because again, it was like, well, Jim, I would love to take your ProGym, but I'm vegan. I only want plant. So we're not going to not supply those consumers with what they want. We're going to try and do that. And then we have a bar that is taken 2 years to develop.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of people say, well, why? Why is it 2 years? Because it's Jim Stefani.
I completely understand the bar thing. I've talked to so many people.
Right.
And those things can take it's just, I've spoken to some people and someone came to me and they said, oh, this is my new bar. It's a moderate protein, 15 grams. This is 6 months in the making. And he came to me and he gave me a test run and I said, it's not bad. And he's like, you know what? I'll do another one. Comes back to me 6 months later. It's like, how about this one? He said, I've actually finished this. This is way better. I've put it in the production line. And then I said to him, I said, so this is your improvement from what you gave me 6 months ago when you also thought it was pretty much done. He said, yeah. And I was like, based on that difference, I think you can do better. So I pulled it from the production, did it 6 months later. And I was like, there goes, a year and a half. By the time it's finished, it's 18 months, 20 months later. He was like, yep. It took me, and it just adds up really fast. I can see how it could take so long. And with Jim, I can completely imagine.
Oh, I think
difficult.
Yeah, we've definitely pissed off a lot of manufacturers that we've kind of like had to, because the way it works for your consumers, and you, Shane, this is that every manufacturer who produces products, you want to make sure that the manufacturers have all the FDA certificates or NSF and all the certifications to make sure you're producing these products in a very controlled, safe environment. And So there's only so many, especially in the US. But every manufacturer has their own research and development, their food scientists or their scientists on staff. And in normal cases, you know, like if it was just me, I'd walk in there and I'd sit down with their R&D department and I'd come up with my formula and I'd say, I want this and want that. And they'd give me feedback and give me the data and produce a product.
Yeah.
It's different when you walk in with Jim Stepani, who literally tells the R&D department,
what to do.
You're going to do it this way. Because they're used to just having the conveyor belt of, and it's a business. So bars, for instance, you know, you think about a bar, you're either going to get the extruded bar like a Quest bar. Yeah. You're going to get like the multi-layer bar, like, you know, the one bar or
Fit Crunch.
Fit Crunch. You're going to get like the crisp bar that is like, you know, like a Luna bar, or you're going to get, the nut butter, you know, like the wafer bar, like Power Crunch, right?
Yeah.
And generally speaking, you know, each manufacturer who does those types of bars, they're set up to do just either one or the other, right? Very few do multiple variations of different type of bars. So from a brand standpoint, it kind of boxes brands in who want to come up with their bars because they're only going to get those options available to them. That's the reason why a lot of the bars out there, they're all kind of the same.
Yeah.
Maybe the macros are different. The challenge for us was Jim's like, I want this type of bar that doesn't exist in the marketplace, and then finding a manufacturer that had the capability and the willingness to go ahead and do it, especially with the macros. And so the macros that Jim wanted and the sources of protein, because as you probably know, we are not fans of whey protein concentrate, mainly because of the high lactose in concentrate. So a lot of people can't take it. It's the reason why we don't use it in our whey protein powder. But the high lactose whey protein concentrate in a bar form is actually, it makes that bar shelf life and ability to actually stay together, because it's basically more suitable for foods. But Jim's like, nope, I don't want anything to be in here that would be a whey protein concentrate. So he's like, I want it to be isolate or casein or milk, you know, the forms of protein that I'm good with in ProGym. Those are the only forms that I'll use. And so it really challenged the R&D department and the company to not only just stick to those specifics and those parameters, but it kind of busted, you know, them at the seals, because then we're like, well, we don't want an extruded bar either. We don't want a multi-layer bar either. We don't want a wafer. We don't want a crisp bar. They're like, well, what do you want? And Jim had this idea, and what we came out with is actually pretty cool. And it sounds self-serving to say, you know, it's the most unique bar you've ever tasted. And I know how that sounds because every brand says the same thing. But when I get samples, Shane, I'm going to send it to you. And I want to video your response when you eat it.
I've seen some unique things. Europe is, I had this discussion with someone the other day about why European functional companies are so unique. And they told me that in Europe and the UK, you probably get the same variety you do in the US, but it's per country. And then when you've got such a tight-knit group of countries, you can just go, oh, I'll get a protein bar done in Germany. I'll get it done in Spain. I'll get so in that is what creates the difference, I think. But I'm interested because with the US, I know how easy and simple or small the selection is. Like you said, you get the Fit Crunches. You get more of those nut butter outright bars now. I'm interested about this. I mean, functional food is a favorite category, and I can understand hearing that why it's taken you so long. But I could have guessed it as well.
It's not easy with Jim, but that's what makes it rewarding, is that because he really does care. And you know, I do want to get him on with you at some point. You know, to where if you wanted to do another podcast and actually not have me but have him.
Oh no, it'll be.
You would have fun with him. He's.
I feel like he would have fun. I had a conversation with John Meadows Mountain Dog. I've had one with the Gorilla Chemist, and there's certain people that when they talk to you, just like, God damn, I should have stayed in school longer or something, right? And I get the sense that Jim's going to be one of those guys. He's going to be like, oh, I put this in here because this does this and this digests like that. And I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. I'm on the simpler side. Does it help pumps? Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like, good, man. I mean, but the thing about it is that he's, for me in our relationship was that I was that kid who would go up and bother the smartest guy in the building. Yeah. And the nice thing was that I was able to kind of, listen to how he said things because it mattered the most to me from the standpoint of what I wanted, but the way that he delivered it and the way that he was saying it, it wasn't over my head.
I think he's one of the few, like, well, I'd say like John Meadows and Gorilla Chemist, when the Gorilla Chemist talks to you, I mean, he's talking chemicals and molecules, and you're just like, and I remember saying this to someone, I was like, you should just get him to tone it down a little bit. But it's hard to say that to someone who understands things so well. He's just that smart. But Jim, obviously, he's incredible at communicating it because he has the Jim Army.
Well, he has able
to do it.
Exactly. And I think that's what he says. He says it's like, he's funny. He always goes, he's not all about the science. That's the funny thing. He's like, look, because he knows data, he knows research, where and Jim has actually got into it with a lot of academics when he used to speak at some of these, like the NSCA, and he was brought over to, I'll never forget, we were over to, what's the big one in the UK? Body Power in the UK?
Power, Birmingham, yeah.
And so he was always, one of the speakers at all the things, and he would get into it with these guys who were so scientific and, well, Jim, the data says this, and Jim, I'll never forget. And Jim goes, yeah. Well, there was also scientific research that came out that said creatine didn't do shit. But you're going to hang your hat on that? You're going to tell me it doesn't work? Well, let's look at the data. The data was taking just creatine by itself showed no significant difference in the subjects who took it or the ones who didn't. Well, yeah, no shit, because creatine monohydrate taken by itself doesn't do anything. You need a carrier, you need leucine, you need dextrose, you need something to make that creatine essentially get into the muscle. So taking monohydrate by itself, yeah, of course, the scientific data, if that's all they used, then of course that doesn't mean that the science was right. It means that the freaking scientists didn't know what the hell they were doing because they didn't understand the application. That's like saying, well, cars don't drive. Yeah, they don't when you don't put gas in them. It's like, and so he was able to make the correlation between the scientific levels, but also the actual application, because all these scientists who would do the research, they never taken a product in their life. They never worked out in their life. And Jim was that scientist, but he was a bodybuilder at heart, and he was always interested in like, I'm going to do the science to find out what I need to take for myself. And then when he wrote for Joe Weider for 10 years in the magazines, he had to talk to guys like us, write out articles that guys like us could understand. Yeah. So he could sit in a room and his Rolodex of information is deeper than anybody's I've ever seen. I mean, you could ask him, Jim, what was the research study done on this? And he could quote it like that. It's insane. It's like before we got on, I told you he remembers people who he met at an expo from years before and says, oh yeah, how's your daughter doing? And it's like, I don't quite understand how he does it, but he does the same thing with information, but he has to be able to articulate that to guys like you and me, because dude, I could never, I'm just the guy who understands how to put together the culture, the business, and the message and create the opportunities for his message to be heard. Like I always say, we got the greatest team on earth, Jim, between he and I, because he is definitely the magician. I'm the guy under the stage making sure that, that his stuff is where it needs to be when he needs it. So like when he's, trying to, cut the lady in half, I have to make sure that the apparatus is there for him to do his thing. And so I'm running in circles doing that. And we have, a team that is behind the scenes too, doing it with a great team. but they're all part of the same ethos and message, and we all take the products. And as much as it is a business to try and thrive on, it's just the same type of importance that we never want to be that brand that's like, oh well, they're just putting out products and putting out flavors and trying to sell me on some gimmicky shit. And that's what we don't want to do. But Jim can definitely work his way around keeping the message to where it's palatable for somebody to kind of take away and understand it, for sure.
Yeah. I do appreciate that. Like I said, the Jim arm is proof that he can communicate what he needs to, despite how in depth he could probably go when needed. But I might say this might be the longest podcast I've ever done. This is probably the longest.
Well, I take up a lot of oxygen, my man. So
I'm sure the listeners will be especially Lucas. He's works with Prometheus over in Europe. He likes the long ones. He likes to listen and it does cardio to them. So I guess he's going to be doing an hour and a half on this one. But so thank you for coming on.
I apologize to you and your team for taking up so much.
No. It was awesome. It was great. It was what I expected and more. So I mean. Definitely keep me in the loop on the protein bar, protein powder. I'll keep an eye out for that. But once again, thank you for coming on.
No, thank you, Shane. And like I said, my tip of the hat to you guys at Stacked. It's an honor to kind of be with you. And I know it's been, communication used to happen, and I plan on giving you guys a lot more. But anytime, and if you ever want to try and coordinate something with Jim, I'll definitely make that happen. Rest assured, he'll jump on for sure.
You know what? If I get the protein bar and it is as good and as different as you say it is, you know what? We'll do it. We'll get him on and we'll talk him through it.
Deal. I'll bribe you with our new protein bar soon to come.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you once again. Thank you for coming on, and look forward to having you on soon.
Thanks, Shane. Take care, buddy.